You're floating in the endless blue of the Pacific Ocean, suspended in liquid darkness thousands of feet below the surface. The pressure here would crush a human instantly, but for you, this is home. You can't see much, just the occasional flash of bioluminescent creatures drifting past like living stars. Your body is built for this world, streamlined and perfectly adapted to a life where sunlight has never touched your skin. You're a deep-sea batfish, and your story begins in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. But you weren't always down here. Your journey started much closer to the surface, in waters where light still filtered through and life moved at a completely different pace. That was months ago, back when you looked nothing like you do now. Back then, you were something else entirely, something that would have been unrecognizable to the creature you've become. The transformation you've undergone is so dramatic that scientists once thought your juvenile form was a completely different species. They had no idea they were looking at the same animal at different stages of life. Right now, though, you're fully grown and you're hungry. Your mouth opens to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth designed for one purpose: grabbing prey that ventures too close. You don't chase your food. That's not how batfish hunt. Instead, you wait. You hover motionless in the water column, your dark body blending perfectly with the surrounding blackness. To anything swimming nearby, you're invisible until it's too late. Something moves in the distance. It's small, probably a juvenile lanternfish, making its way through your territory. You adjust your position slightly, angling your body so you're perfectly aligned with its path. The fish has no idea you're there. It swims closer, following some instinct that tells it this depth is safe. It's wrong when it gets within striking range. You don't hesitate. Your jaws snap forward with explosive speed, and the lanternfish disappears into your mouth before it even knows what hit it. You swallow it whole and settle back into your waiting position. One meal down, but in this environment, you never know when the next opportunity will come. The deep sea is unforgiving. Food is scarce, and every calorie counts. Unlike fish that live in the sunlit waters above, you can't rely on a steady stream of plankton or smaller fish. Down here, it's feast or famine, and you've learned to make the most of every feeding opportunity. Your body has adapted accordingly. Your stomach can expand to accommodate prey much larger than what seems possible, and your metabolism has slowed to conserve energy during the long stretches between meals. But let's go back to where this all started. Let's rewind your story to the very beginning, back when you were nothing more than a tiny egg drifting in the open ocean. Your mother released you and thousands of your siblings into the water column, and from that moment, you were on your own. There was no parental care, no protection, no guidance, just you and the vast blue wilderness of the sea. You hatched after about a week, emerging as a transparent larva, no bigger than a grain of rice. You were practically invisible, which was your only defense against the countless predators that filled the water around you. Your body was almost entirely see-through, with just the faintest outline of developing organs visible beneath your delicate skin. You had no swimming ability to speak of. You simply drifted with the currents, completely at the mercy of the ocean's movements. Food at this stage was microscopic. You fed on tiny zooplankton, organisms so small they were barely visible to the naked eye. Finding them required luck more than skill. You would drift through patches of plankton-rich water, opening your mouth and hoping something edible would float in. Sometimes you got lucky and encountered a dense swarm of copepods or other tiny crustaceans. Other times, you went days without finding anything substantial to eat. The mortality rate for batfish larvae is staggering. Of the thousands of siblings that hatched alongside you, Only a tiny fraction would survive their first few weeks of life. Some were eaten by jellyfish, their transparent bodies offering no protection against stinging tentacles. Others were consumed by arrow worms, voracious predators that struck without warning. Many simply starved, unable to find enough food to fuel their developing bodies. You were one of the lucky ones. After several weeks of drifting and feeding, your body began to change. Your fins started to develop, giving you your first real ability to control your movement through the water. Your transparent skin began to darken, and distinctive patterns started to emerge. Most importantly, your mouth grew larger, allowing you to tackle bigger prey. You were no longer completely helpless. This was when you entered what scientists call the juvenile stage, and this is where your story gets really interesting. Because juvenile batfish don't look anything like adult batfish. In fact, they're so different that for years, researchers classified them as entirely separate species. Your juvenile form was flat and disc-shaped, with enormous fins that made you look more like a floating leaf than a fish. Your coloration was completely different too. Instead of the dark, mottled pattern you wear now, you were brown and orange with intricate markings that perfectly mimicked floating debris. This wasn't just coincidence. Your juvenile appearance was a masterpiece of evolutionary deception. You looked exactly like a piece of dead seaweed or a fragment of drifting wood, complete with fake damage marks and discoloration that made the illusion complete. Predators would swim right past you, dismissing you as just another piece of harmless ocean junk. It was the perfect disguise for a vulnerable young fish trying to survive in hostile waters. But the disguise came with limitations. Your flattened body and oversized fins made you a poor swimmer. You could barely manage more than a slow, awkward flutter through the water. Speed was not an option, so stealth became everything. You spent most of your time near the surface, drifting among actual debris and trying to blend in with the floating mass of organic matter that collects at the ocean's edge. Feeding became more sophisticated during this stage. Your mouth had grown large enough to handle small fish and crustaceans, but catching them required strategy. You couldn't chase prey, so you had to make them come to you. You learned to position yourself near schools of small fish, remaining perfectly still until one wandered close enough to grab. Your strike had to be perfect. You only got one chance before the school scattered. During this time, you encountered other juvenile batfish, but interactions were rare and brief. Your species isn't social by nature, and competition for food meant that other batfish were more likely to be rivals than companions. You learned to recognize the signs of their presence, the subtle movements that distinguished another disguised juvenile from actual floating debris. Sometimes you'd find yourself drifting near another juvenile for days, both of you maintaining your disguises while secretly aware of each other's presence. The juvenile stage lasted for months, and during this time, your body began preparing for the next phase of your transformation. Gradually, your fins started to shrink relative to your body size. Your flat, disc-like shape began to elongate and streamline. Your coloration started to shift from the mottled browns and oranges of your disguise to the darker, more uniform patterns of an adult. Most importantly, your internal organs began rearranging themselves in preparation for a completely different lifestyle. The transition wasn't sudden. It happened slowly over several weeks, and during this time, you were vulnerable in new ways. Your disguise was becoming less effective as your body changed, but you hadn't yet developed the full capabilities of an adult. You were caught between two worlds, no longer able to hide among the surface debris, but not yet ready for life in the deep ocean. This awkward period was dangerous. Predators that had once ignored you now saw through your failing disguise. Your swimming ability was improving, but you still couldn't outrun most threats. You had to rely on timing and luck, moving only when necessary, and spending long hours motionless in whatever cover you could find. Then came the moment that would define the rest of your existence, an instinct triggered by changes in water temperature or the length of daylight filtering down from above, told you it was time to descend. You began swimming downward, leaving the sunlit surface waters behind forever. Your body was ready now. Your swim bladder had adjusted to handle the increasing pressure. Your eyes had adapted to function in near total darkness, and your metabolism had shifted to match the slower pace of deep-sea life. The descent took days. You swam steadily downward, passing through layers of water that each had their own characteristics. The bright blues of the surface gave way to deeper greens, then to purple, and finally to the absolute black of the deep ocean. The pressure increased with every foot of depth, but your body adjusted automatically. Fish that lived their entire lives in the surface waters would have been crushed by the pressure you now considered normal. As you descended, you noticed the water getting colder. The warmth of the sun-heated surface layers disappeared entirely, replaced by the constant chill of the deep sea. Your metabolism slowed in response, conserving energy for the lean times ahead. Food would be scarce down here, and you needed to be ready for long periods between meals. The deeper you went, the stranger the world became. Creatures you had never seen before drifted past like aliens from another planet. Jellyfish with bodies like glowing umbrellas pulsed through the water, their tentacles trailing behind them like ethereal ribbons. Siphonophores stretched longer than blue whales, their bodies strung with lights that blinked in patterns you couldn't understand. Some fish had evolved their own light sources, carrying glowing lures or rows of photophores that made them look like living constellations. You were entering a realm where the rules of survival were completely different. Up at the surface, speed and agility mattered. Down here, patience was king. Energy was too precious to waste on unnecessary movement. Every calorie had to count, and every hunt had to be calculated. The creatures that thrived in this environment were the ones that had mastered the art of efficiency. Your new body was perfect for this world. Your large mouth could unhinge to swallow prey nearly as big as yourself. Your stomach could stretch to accommodate meals that would have to last for weeks. Your dark coloration made you invisible against the black water, and your slow, deliberate movements helped you blend into the stillness of the deep. You had become a living shadow, a predator designed for a world without light. The first time you encountered another adult batfish, you almost didn't recognize it as your own species. It hung motionless about 50 feet away, its body so perfectly camouflaged that you only noticed it when it moved slightly to adjust its position. The two of you regarded each other for a moment, then went back to hunting. There was no aggression, no territoriality. The deep sea was vast enough for both of you, and prey was too scarce to waste energy on conflicts. Weeks passed in this routine of waiting and hunting. You learned the rhythms of the deep ocean, the subtle patterns that governed life at this depth. You discovered that certain times were better for hunting than others. During what would have been night on the surface, more creatures descended from the upper waters, bringing with them the possibility of a meal. You learned to position yourself along these migration routes, waiting for something to pass within striking distance. Your first major kill as an adult came after nearly a month of small meals. A juvenile squid, probably lost and confused after descending too far, wandered into your territory. It was easily 3 times the size of anything you had caught before, its tentacles writhing as it searched for a way back to shallower water. You watched it approach, calculating the perfect moment to strike. When it came within range, you exploded forward with a speed that seemed impossible for such a large fish. Your jaws clamped around the squid's mantle, and within seconds, it was over. Swallowing the squid took several minutes. Your throat stretched impossibly wide as you worked the massive meal down into your stomach. Once it was down, you felt a satisfaction unlike anything you had experienced as a juvenile. This single meal would sustain you for weeks, maybe even a month if you were careful with your energy expenditure. But the deep ocean had more surprises in store for you. As you grew larger and more confident in your hunting abilities, you began to encounter creatures that made even your impressive size seem small. Giant isopods scuttled across the seafloor below, their armored bodies the size of footballs. Six-gill sharks, ancient predators that had remained unchanged for millions of years, cruised through your territory with casual indifference. These were creatures from nightmares, but down here, they were just neighbors. Your first encounter with a six-gill shark was terrifying. You were hunting near a thermal vent, drawn by the unusual concentration of life around the superheated water when the massive shape materialized out of the darkness. The shark was easily 20 feet long, its prehistoric features giving it an otherworldly appearance. Its small eyes fixed on you for a moment, evaluating whether you were worth the effort. You remained perfectly still, hoping your dark coloration would help you blend into the background. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the shark lost interest and disappeared back into the blackness. That encounter taught you an important lesson about life in the deep sea. You might be a predator, but you were far from the top of the food chain. There were creatures down here that could swallow you whole without a second thought. Survival meant knowing when to hunt and when to hide, when to be aggressive and when to be invisible. The thermal vents became one of your favorite hunting grounds. The heat from these underwater geysers created pockets of life in the otherwise barren deep sea. Tube worms clustered around the vents, their bodies filtering nutrients from the mineral-rich water. Crabs and other crustaceans scavenged among the worms, and small fish fed on the abundant bacteria that thrived in the heated water. It was like an oasis in the desert, a rare concentration of food in a world where meals were usually separated by hundreds of miles. But even these productive areas had their dangers. The water near the vents was often too hot for extended exposure, and the rocky terrain provided plenty of places for predators to hide. You learned to hunt the edges of these communities, picking off stragglers and wounded animals while avoiding the hazards of getting too close to the superheated water. Your hunting technique evolved as you gained experience. You discovered that you could use the thermal currents to your advantage, positioning yourself where the heated water met the cold, deep-sea environment. The temperature difference created distortions that helped mask your presence, making you even more invisible to potential prey. You learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when schools of lanternfish or other deep-sea species were about to descend from the upper waters. Patience became your greatest asset. You could remain motionless for hours, even days, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Your metabolism had slowed to match this lifestyle, allowing you to survive on surprisingly little food. When you did eat, you made it count, often consuming prey that was a significant percentage of your own body weight. The seasons meant little at this depth, but you could still sense the subtle changes that occurred in the ocean above. During certain times of the year, more organic matter would rain down from the surface waters, creating feeding opportunities for the creatures of the deep. Dead plankton, fragments of jellyfish, and other organic debris would drift down like snow, bringing with it a temporary increase in the deep-sea food web. These periods of abundance were crucial for your survival. You learned to take advantage of them, feeding more aggressively when food was plentiful and building up the energy reserves that would carry you through the leaner times. Your body became a living storage system, capable of storing nutrients for extended periods between meals. As months turned into years, you grew larger and more formidable. Your hunting skills sharpened, and your knowledge of the deep-sea environment expanded. You learned the locations of the most productive hunting grounds, the migration patterns of potential prey, and the territories of the larger predators that you needed to avoid. You became a master of your environment, perfectly adapted to life in one of the most challenging habitats on Earth. But growth came with new challenges. Larger size meant higher energy requirements, and finding enough food to sustain your increasing bulk became more difficult. You had to expand your hunting range, venturing into unfamiliar territories in search of prey. Some of these journeys took you to the very edges of the continental shelf, where the seafloor dropped away into even deeper abyssal plains. The abyssal plains were like another world entirely. The seafloor stretched endlessly in all directions, covered in a fine layer of sediment that recorded millions of years of marine snowfall. Life here was even more sparse than in the depths you knew, consisting mainly of creatures that had adapted to survive on the minimal nutrients that filtered down from above. Sea cucumbers crawled across the bottom, processing sediment for any organic matter it might contain. Strange worms burrowed through the mud, and bizarre deep-sea mushrooms sprouted from the seafloor like alien gardens. These expeditions to the abyssal plains taught you that the deep sea was far more diverse than you had imagined. Each new area you explored had its own unique ecosystem, its own set of predators and prey. You encountered creatures that seemed to defy the laws of physics: translucent fish with bodies like living glass, squid with arms that stretched longer than their bodies, and crustaceans with legs so delicate they looked like they would break at the slightest touch. One of the strangest encounters happened during a hunting expedition to a region where whale falls dotted the seafloor. These massive carcasses, the remains of whales that had died in the surface waters and sunk to the bottom, created temporary ecosystems that could last for decades. The first time you approached one of these underwater graveyards, the smell hit you long before you could see anything. It was the rich, complex scent of decomposition mixed with the chemical signatures of hundreds of different species. The whale fall was like nothing you had ever seen. The massive skeleton was covered in a writhing carpet of hagfish, their snake-like bodies twisted together as they burrowed into the remaining flesh. Crabs scuttled across the bones, fighting over scraps of blubber. Strange bacteria formed colorful mats on the carcass, breaking down the whale's tissues and releasing nutrients into the surrounding water. It was both horrifying and mesmerizing, a feeding frenzy that had been going on for months, maybe years. You approached cautiously, aware that this concentration of life would also attract larger predators. Your instincts were right. As you drew closer, you spotted the unmistakable silhouette of a sleeper shark lurking near the whale's head. These sharks were even more dangerous than the six gills you had encountered before, slower moving but more aggressive, with jaws powerful enough to crush bone. You decided this particular meal wasn't worth the risk and retreated to a safer distance. But the whale fall taught you something important about the deep-sea ecosystem. Life down here was all about taking advantage of rare opportunities. When a massive source of nutrients, like a whale carcass appeared, every creature in the area would eventually find its way there. You began to seek out these oases of abundance, learning to recognize the signs that indicated their presence. Sometimes it was a change in the water chemistry, sometimes an unusual concentration of scavengers moving in the same direction. Your hunting strategy evolved to take advantage of these patterns. Instead of waiting in random locations, you began positioning yourself along the routes that scavengers used to travel between food sources. It was like setting up an ambush along a highway. Eventually, something would come along that you could catch. This approach was more energy efficient than random hunting, and it led to more consistent success. The technique worked particularly well during the seasonal migrations that occurred even in the deep sea. Certain species of lanternfish would descend to your depth during specific times of the year, following temperature gradients or pursuing their own prey. You learned to predict these movements, positioning yourself along the migration corridors days or even weeks in advance. Your first encounter with a spawning aggregation was almost overwhelming. Hundreds of deep-sea fish had gathered in a relatively small area, drawn together by some instinct you didn't understand. The water was thick with the chemical signals they were releasing, and their movements created currents you could feel from hundreds of yards away. It was a feeding opportunity unlike anything you had experienced, but it was also chaotic and dangerous. With so many fish packed into such a small space, larger predators were sure to be nearby. You approached the aggregation carefully, staying on the periphery where individual fish were more isolated. Your strategy was to pick off stragglers, fish that had become separated from the main group or were too focused on spawning to notice your presence. It worked perfectly. Over the course of several days, you managed to capture more prey than you usually caught in months. Your stomach stretched to accommodate the bounty, and for the first time since becoming an adult, you felt truly satiated. But the spawning aggregation also brought unexpected dangers. On your third day of hunting there, you noticed something moving in your peripheral vision. At first, you thought it was just another batfish taking advantage of the feeding opportunity. But as it drew closer, you realized it was something else entirely, a deep-sea predator you had never encountered before. The creature was roughly your size but built completely differently. Its body was elongated and serpentine, with a massive head that seemed disproportionate to the rest of its anatomy. Its mouth was filled with teeth that curved backward, designed to prevent prey from escaping once caught. But most unsettling were its eyes, large and forward-facing, with an intelligence that suggested this was not just another mindless predator. The two of you circled each other warily, each trying to determine if the other represented a threat or an opportunity. You had the advantage of familiarity with the area, but this newcomer had speed and agility that you couldn't match. The standoff lasted for what felt like hours, both of you maintaining a careful distance while continuing to hunt the abundant prey around the spawning aggregation. Eventually, the stranger lost interest and disappeared into the darkness. But the encounter left you unsettled. It was a reminder that even after years of living in the deep sea, there were still mysteries in the darkness. Creatures you had never seen before, predators with capabilities you couldn't predict. The ocean was vast, and you had only explored a tiny fraction of it. This realization sparked something new in your behavior, a desire to explore beyond your established territory. You began making longer journeys, sometimes traveling for weeks to reach new hunting grounds. These expeditions took you to places that challenged everything you thought you knew about deep-sea life. One journey led you to a region where the seafloor was covered in strange formations that looked like underwater cities. Towering spires of mineral deposits rose from the bottom, some reaching hundreds of feet into the water column. These structures, formed by geological processes you couldn't understand, created a complex three-dimensional habitat unlike anything you had seen before. The mineral spires were home to creatures that had adapted to this unique environment. Tube worms grew in spiraling patterns around the formations, their bodies following the contours of the rock. Fish with modified fins used the spires as perches, ambushing prey that swam too close to the formations. It was like discovering an alien city on the seafloor, complete with its own residents and customs. Hunting in this environment required new strategies. The complex terrain provided plenty of hiding spots, but it also created opportunities for ambush from multiple directions. You had to constantly watch for threats from above, below, and all sides. Your usual technique of hovering motionlessly in the water column was less effective here, where prey could easily disappear behind the mineral formations. You spent weeks exploring this underwater landscape, learning its rhythms and discovering its secrets. Some of the spires were hollow, creating caves and tunnels that extended deep into the seafloor. These spaces were home to creatures that never ventured into open water, bizarre fish with oversized eyes, crustaceans with bodies adapted for crawling through tight spaces, and invertebrates that looked more like plants than animals. The exploration taught you that the deep sea was far more complex than the empty void it appeared to be from a distance. Every region had its own character, its own ecosystem, its own challenges and opportunities. You began to see patterns in this diversity, understanding how different environments shaped the creatures that lived in them. Your journeys also brought you into contact with other deep-sea predators, some friendly, others decidedly hostile. You learned to recognize the territorial markers that different species used to claim their hunting grounds, and you developed a sense for when it was safe to enter an area and when it was better to keep moving. One particularly memorable encounter occurred during a hunting expedition to a region known for its unusual geological activity. The seafloor here was scarred with cracks and fissures, some of which released streams of heated water and strange chemicals. The environment was harsh even by deep-sea standards, but it supported a unique community of organisms that had adapted to the extreme conditions. You were hunting near one of these thermal vents when you encountered the largest predator you had ever seen. At first, you thought it was a rock formation or perhaps a piece of debris that had fallen from the surface. But then it moved, and you realized you were looking at a creature that dwarfed even the largest sharks you had encountered. The monster was some kind of deep-sea ray, but unlike any ray you had ever heard described, its body was easily 40 feet across, with wing-like fins that moved in slow, hypnotic undulations. Its mouth was on the underside of its body, and when it opened, you could see rows of grinding plates designed for crushing hard-shelled prey. This was not a creature that bothered with small fish. It fed on much larger game. You remained perfectly still as the giant ray passed overhead, its massive shadow blocking out what little light filtered down from above. The encounter lasted only a few minutes, but it left a lasting impression. There were creatures in the deep sea that operated on a completely different scale from anything you had imagined. You were a successful predator in your own right, but compared to something like that ray, you were barely more than plankton. The experience humbled you and reminded you of your place in the deep-sea ecosystem. You were neither the smallest nor the largest predator in these waters. You occupied a specific niche, filling a particular role in the complex web of relationships that governed life at this depth. Your success depended not just on your hunting abilities, but on your understanding of how you fit into this larger system. As your exploration of the deep sea continued, you began to notice subtle changes in your own body. You were still growing, but more slowly now, and your metabolism was continuing to adapt to the demands of your environment. Your hunting technique was becoming more refined, more efficient. You wasted less energy on unsuccessful strikes and had become better at reading the behavior of potential prey. These improvements came at a cost, though. Your body was aging, and the constant stress of life in the deep sea was taking its toll. Your movements were becoming slightly slower, your reflexes not quite as sharp as they once were. It was a gradual process, barely noticeable from day to day, but undeniable when you looked back over months and years. The aging process brought new challenges to your survival. Younger, faster predators were beginning to appear in your territory, and you found yourself having to work harder to maintain your position in the local hierarchy. Your experience gave you advantages that youth couldn't match, but there was no denying that your physical capabilities were beginning to decline. You adapted to these changes by becoming even more strategic in your hunting. Instead of relying purely on speed and power, you began using cunning and patience to a greater degree. You learned to position yourself in locations where prey would be forced to come to you rather than having to chase them down. You became a master of the ambush, using every advantage the environment could provide. Your territory also began to shift as you aged. The most productive hunting grounds required more energy to defend, and you found yourself gravitating toward areas that were less contested but still provided adequate feeding opportunities. It was a calculated trade-off, less competition, but also fewer chances for major kills. The changes in your behavior and territory brought you into contact with other aging predators, fish that had faced the same challenges you were now experiencing. These encounters were different from the territorial disputes of your youth. There was a mutual respect among the older predators, an understanding that survival at this stage of life required different strategies than the aggressive competition of earlier years. You began to notice patterns in the behavior of these older fish, learning from their adaptations and incorporating their techniques into your own hunting strategy. Some had become specialists, focusing on particular types of prey that matched their declining physical abilities. Others had developed new hunting partnerships, working together in ways that would have been impossible when they were younger and more territorial. The deep sea was revealing new layers of complexity as you aged, showing you aspects of the ecosystem that you had been too young or too focused on immediate survival to notice before. The environment that had once seemed like a hostile wilderness was becoming more familiar, more predictable. You were no longer just surviving in the deep sea. You were becoming part of it, integrated into its rhythms and cycles in ways that went far beyond simple predation. Your understanding of the deep sea environment had evolved from the basic knowledge needed for survival to something approaching wisdom. You could read the subtle signs that indicated changes in current patterns, temperature fluctuations, and the movement of prey species. This knowledge allowed you to anticipate feeding opportunities and avoid dangers with an efficiency that younger fish couldn't match. But with this wisdom came the growing awareness that your time as an apex predator in this environment was limited. The deep sea was eternal, but your place in it was temporary. The realization didn't bring fear or despair. It was simply another fact to be integrated into your survival strategy, like the knowledge of where to find thermal vents or how to recognize the approach of larger predators. The wisdom you've accumulated serves you well, but it also brings new responsibilities. You've noticed something changing in the waters around you, a shift in the chemical signals that drift through the darkness. Your body recognizes these changes before your mind does, responding to ancient instincts that have been dormant for years. The time for reproduction has arrived, and with it, a completely different set of challenges. Finding a mate in the vast emptiness of the deep sea is no simple task. Unlike the surface waters, where fish can rely on visual cues or large aggregations, down here everything depends on chemical communication. Your body begins producing pheromones, complex molecules that will drift through the water column and hopefully attract another batfish ready to spawn. The process is incredibly inefficient. Your chemical messages might travel for miles before reaching another member of your species, if they reach one at all. You begin a slow migration toward deeper waters, following instincts you don't fully understand. The journey takes you to places even more remote than your usual hunting grounds, regions where the seafloor drops away into trenches so deep that even your pressure-adapted body feels the strain. These are the spawning grounds of your species, chosen not for their abundance of food, but for their isolation from predators and the specific water conditions needed for egg development. The migration is grueling. You travel for weeks, moving through water so cold it makes your usual environment seem tropical by comparison. Food becomes even scarcer than normal, and you're forced to survive on the energy reserves built up during months of successful hunting. Your body begins to change as you travel, developing the specialized features needed for reproduction. Your usually efficient metabolism shifts to prioritize reproductive functions over simple survival. Along the way, you encounter other batfish making the same journey. These meetings are brief and cautious. Your species remains largely solitary, even during the spawning season. But there's an understanding between the travelers, a shared purpose that temporarily overrides the usual territorial instincts. You swim in loose formation for days at a time, each fish maintaining their distance but drawing some comfort from the presence of others. The spawning grounds, when you finally reach them, are unlike anywhere you've hunted before. The water here is ancient, having circulated through the deepest parts of the ocean for decades or even centuries. It carries with it the chemical signatures of places you'll never see: polar seas, abyssal plains, underwater mountain ranges thousands of miles away. The environment feels primordial, as if you've traveled not just through space, but through time, arriving at the birthplace of your species. Here, finally, you encounter others of your kind in numbers you've never seen before. The spawning aggregation is small by surface standards, perhaps 24 fish spread across several square miles of water. But for a species as solitary as yours, it represents a massive gathering. The water fills with chemical signals as the assembled fish communicate through pheromones, establishing dominance hierarchies and mating preferences through methods more subtle than any surface observer could detect. The mating process itself is surprisingly violent. Male batfish, driven by hormones and the knowledge that this may be their only chance to pass on their genes, become aggressive in ways that seem to contradict their usual patient hunting style. Battles break out over access to females, with competitors using their powerful jaws and bulk to settle disputes. You find yourself drawn into these conflicts, your years of hunting experience translating into combat effectiveness. Your first fight is with a male slightly smaller than yourself, but younger and more aggressive. He challenges your approach to a potential mate, positioning himself between you and her with clear, hostile intent. The confrontation begins slowly, with both of you circling and assessing each other's capabilities. Then he makes his move, lunging forward with jaws agape, trying to clamp down on your flank. Your response is instantaneous and brutal. Years of hunting have given you reflexes he can't match, and you twist away from his attack while simultaneously striking at his exposed side. Your teeth find their mark, tearing through flesh and drawing a cloud of blood that disperses quickly in the cold water. He retreats, but the fight isn't over. For the next several minutes, you exchange attacks, each trying to inflict enough damage to force the other to withdraw. The battle ends when you manage to get behind him and deliver a crushing bite to his dorsal fin. The injury isn't life-threatening, but it's crippling enough to make continued fighting pointless. He flees into the darkness, leaving you victorious but exhausted. The female you were competing for has moved on during the fight, showing no interest in either combatant. Such is the nature of deep-sea romance. Eventually, you do find a mate, an older female who recognizes your strength and experience. The courtship is brief and businesslike, lacking any of the elaborate displays found in surface species. You swim alongside each other for several hours, your bodies occasionally touching as you match each other's movements through the water. When she's ready, the spawning happens quickly. She releases thousands of eggs into the water column while you simultaneously release clouds of sperm, hoping that some combination will result in successful fertilization. The eggs, once fertilized, are immediately abandoned. There's no parental care, no nest building, no protections of any kind. The tiny transparent spheres drift away into the darkness, carrying within them the genetic potential for the next generation. Most will never develop, eaten by filter feeders, destroyed by pressure changes, or simply failing to find the nutrients needed for growth. But some will survive, beginning the same incredible journey you completed years ago. Your role in reproduction complete, you face a choice that will determine the rest of your life. Many of the other spawning fish are already beginning the long journey back to their territories, eager to resume hunting in familiar waters, but something holds you back. Perhaps it's exhaustion from the spawning process, or maybe an instinct that tells you your territorial days are ending. Either way, you find yourself reluctant to begin the return migration. Instead, you remain in the spawning grounds as the other fish gradually disperse. The water becomes quieter, emptier, but also strangely peaceful. Without the constant pressure of defending territory and competing for food, you experience a kind of calm you haven't felt since your juvenile days. Your hunting continues, but it becomes more opportunistic, less driven by the desperate need to maintain your position in the ecosystem. This new lifestyle brings unexpected discoveries, free from the constraints of territorial boundaries. You explore regions you would never have visited as a territorial adult. Some are barren wastelands, where life exists only in the most minimal forms. Others reveal pockets of activity that seem to exist in complete isolation from the rest of the deep-sea ecosystem. One such discovery changes your understanding of the ocean itself. While following a scent trail that you hope will lead to food, you encounter something that defies explanation. It's a structure, artificial, clearly made by some intelligence, but unlike anything you've seen before, the object is massive, easily the size of a whale, and it rests on the seafloor like a monument to some unknown purpose. As you investigate further, you realize the structure is ancient. It's covered in marine growth that must have taken decades to accumulate, and parts of it have been colonized by deep-sea organisms that treat it as just another piece of seafloor terrain. Whatever created this object did so long before you were born, possibly before your entire species evolved. The mystery deepens as you explore the structure's interior. There are chambers and passages that seem designed for creatures much larger than yourself, with features that suggest some kind of technological purpose. But the technology is beyond your understanding, as alien to you as your own hunting instincts would be to the creatures that built this place. You're not the only visitor to this underwater ruin. Other deep-sea creatures have discovered it over the years, and some have made it their permanent home. Giant isopods scuttle through the corridors, their armored bodies perfectly suited for navigating the artificial passages. Six-gill sharks use the structure's shadows for ambush hunting, and colonies of deep-sea corals have established themselves on its exterior surfaces. The structure becomes a new kind of hunting ground for you, but one unlike any natural environment. The artificial geometry creates unusual water currents and acoustic properties that affect how both predators and prey behave. You spend months learning these new patterns, adapting your hunting techniques to take advantage of the structure's unique characteristics. During this time, you notice that your body is continuing to change. The modifications aren't related to growth or reproduction. There's something else entirely, changes that seem to be preparing you for a different phase of existence. Your metabolism slows even further, and your hunting becomes less frequent but more targeted. You begin to require less food to maintain yourself, as if your body is learning to operate on minimal resources. These changes coincide with a shift in your sensory capabilities. Your lateral line system, which detects water movement and pressure changes, becomes more sensitive than it's ever been. You can feel the approach of other creatures from much greater distances, and you begin to perceive patterns in water movement that you never noticed before. The ocean reveals new layers of information, currents within currents, pressure waves that carry messages across vast distances. Your enhanced senses also make you aware of sounds that you've never heard before. The deep sea, which once seemed silent except for the occasional calls of whales or the clicking of dolphin echolocation from far above, begins to reveal a complex acoustic landscape. There are mechanical sounds, rhythmic pulses, and electronic tones that seem to originate from sources you cannot identify. Some of these sounds appear to be communication signals, but they're not being produced by any biological organism you recognize. Well, the realization that there are other intelligences in the ocean, entities capable of creating both physical structures and complex acoustic signals, fundamentally alters your understanding of your environment. You begin to pay more attention to these artificial elements, trying to understand their patterns and purposes. Your exploration of the deep sea takes on a new dimension as you seek out other examples of non-biological activity. Your search leads you to a network of similar structures scattered across the seafloor. They're connected by what appear to be artificial channels cut into the ocean bottom, creating pathways that allow for the movement of water and possibly other things. The entire system seems designed to facilitate some kind of transportation or communication, though its exact purpose remains mysterious. As you follow these underwater highways, you encounter other fish that seem to be drawn to the artificial structures. Some are species you recognize, while others are completely unknown to you. There appears to be a whole ecosystem that has developed around these mysterious constructions, with creatures that have adapted specifically to life in and around the artificial environments. The discovery of this hidden world changes your behavior patterns completely. You abandon any thought of returning to your old territory and instead become an explorer of this underwater civilization. Your hunting adapts to the unique opportunities presented by the artificial ecosystem, and you develop new techniques for catching the specialized prey that inhabit these areas. Your exploration eventually leads you to what appears to be the center of the network, a massive complex of interconnected structures that extends both deep into the seafloor and high into the water column. The scale is overwhelming, easily rivaling the largest natural formations you've ever encountered. The complex pulses with energy, producing light patterns and acoustic signals that create an almost hypnotic environment. As you investigate this central hub, you begin to understand that you're witnessing something unprecedented in your species' history. The artificial structures aren't just random constructions. They're part of a vast system that appears to be actively monitoring and possibly influencing the deep-sea environment. Sensors embedded in the structures track water temperature, chemical composition, and biological activity. The data they collect is processed and transmitted through the network you've discovered. Your presence doesn't go unnoticed by whatever intelligence operates this system. Subtle changes in the acoustic patterns suggest that your activities are being observed and recorded. The realization that you're being studied by some unknown entity should be frightening, but instead, you find it oddly comforting. After a lifetime of hunting and being hunted, being the subject of benevolent scientific curiosity feels almost restful. The artificial ecosystem provides abundant food opportunities, and your health actually improves during your time there. The steady availability of prey allows you to build up energy reserves that you haven't maintained since your younger years. Your movements become more confident, and some of the physical limitations of aging seem to diminish. But this renaissance is temporary. As months pass, you begin to notice that your body is undergoing changes that no amount of good nutrition can reverse. Your scales are becoming less flexible, and your internal organs are showing signs of the accumulated stress from years of life at crushing depth. The deep sea has been your home and your sustainer, but it has also been slowly wearing you down with its relentless pressure and cold. Your swimming becomes more labored and your hunting less frequent. The artificial ecosystem continues to provide opportunities, but you find yourself taking advantage of them less often. Sleep becomes more appealing than activity, and you spend increasing amounts of time resting in the shelter of the mysterious structures. During one of these rest periods, you experience something that changes your perception of the entire deep-sea environment. The acoustic signals produced by the artificial network suddenly shift to patterns that seem almost musical. The sounds create harmonics that resonate through your body, producing sensations you've never experienced before. For a brief moment, you feel connected not just to the immediate environment, but to the entire ocean system. The musical interlude lasts for hours, and during that time, you become aware of the presence of other creatures throughout the network. Fish, squid, crustaceans, and organisms you cannot identify all seem to be experiencing the same acoustic phenomenon. There's a sense of communion, of shared experience that transcends species boundaries. You realize that the artificial intelligence operating this system has created a moment of universal communication among the deep-sea creatures in its domain. When the music finally fades, you're left with a profound sense of having participated in something larger than yourself. The experience provides a new context for your entire life history, from your microscopic beginnings as a drifting larva to your current status as an aging predator in an artificial ecosystem. You begin to understand that individual survival, while important, is just one element in a much more complex system of relationships and dependencies. This understanding brings with it a sense of peace that you've never experienced before. The constant vigilance required for survival in the deep seas begins to relax, replaced by a broader awareness of your place in the oceanic community. Your hunting continues, but it becomes more ritualistic than desperate, a way of maintaining your connection to the natural cycles that have governed your life. Your relationship with the artificial intelligence also evolves. You begin to notice that certain areas of the network are modified in response to your presence, creating optimal hunting conditions or providing shelter during the increasingly frequent storms that sweep through the deep ocean. The system seems to be learning from your behavior, adapting its operations to support not just your survival, but your comfort. As your physical condition continues to decline, these accommodations become more pronounced. Currents are redirected to bring prey directly to your resting spots. Water temperature is adjusted in your immediate vicinity to reduce the metabolic stress of maintaining body heat. The acoustic environment is modified to mask the sounds of your breathing and movement, making hunting easier despite your reduced mobility. The care provided by the artificial system extends beyond simple life support. You begin to receive what can only be described as medical treatment. Microscopic robots, so small they're barely visible, begin cleaning parasites from your scales and gills. Targeted energy beams help reduce inflammation in your aging joints. Chemical treatments are delivered directly to areas showing signs of disease or decay. These interventions slow your physical decline, but cannot stop it entirely. Your body has reached the natural limits of its design, worn out by years of extreme pressure, cold, and the constant stress of predation. But the artificial system's care allows you to experience your final months with a dignity and comfort that would have been impossible in the natural deep-sea environment. During this twilight period of your existence, you become something of a teacher to younger fish that venture into the artificial ecosystem. Your presence and behavior patterns provide them with information about hunting techniques, predator avoidance, and navigation through the complex network of structures. The artificial intelligence facilitates these interactions, creating opportunities for knowledge transfer that benefit the entire community. Your role as an elder in this underwater civilization gives new meaning to your declining years. Instead of simply waiting for death in isolation, as would be natural for your species, you become a repository of information and experience that can benefit future generations. The artificial system preserves and disseminates your knowledge, ensuring that your lifetime of learning won't be lost when your body finally gives out. The teaching process also provides you with a new source of satisfaction. Watching younger fish successfully apply techniques you've demonstrated gives you a sense of accomplishment that rivals your greatest hunting successes. You begin to understand that survival and reproduction aren't the only ways to contribute to the continuation of life. Knowledge sharing and mentorship have their own evolutionary value. As your strength continues to ebb, your movements become increasingly confined to a small area within the central complex. The artificial intelligence responds by concentrating resources in your immediate vicinity, creating what amounts to a specialized care facility designed specifically for your needs. The water chemistry is perfectly balanced, the temperature optimal, and the acoustic environment tailored to promote rest and healing. Your hunting gradually diminishes to nothing, but your nutritional needs are met through other means. The artificial system provides pre-processed nutrients that require minimal energy to digest, allowing you to maintain your strength without the effort of capturing and consuming prey. It's a form of care that no natural ecosystem could provide, representing a level of technological sophistication that suggests intelligence far beyond anything your species has ever encountered. The final phase of your existence becomes a meditation on the nature of life itself. Freed from the immediate pressures of survival, you develop a deeper appreciation for the subtle beauties of the deep-sea environment. The play of artificial lights across the network structures, the complex rhythms of the acoustic communications, the graceful movements of the creatures that share your artificial habitat, all of these become sources of contemplation and wonder. Your enhanced sensory capabilities, developed during your exploration of the network, allow you to perceive aspects of the artificial ecosystem that would be invisible to younger, more active fish. You become aware of the vast computational processes that govern the system's operations, the constant analysis and optimization that keeps the entire network functioning. In your final months, you serve as both a beneficiary and an observer of an intelligence that operates on scales beyond biological comprehension. The artificial intelligence seems to recognize your unique perspective as an aging observer, occasionally adjusting the network's operations to provide you with better views of particularly interesting phenomena. You witness the arrival and integration of new structures, the adaptation of the system to environmental changes, and the complex interactions between artificial and biological components of the ecosystem. Your observations during this period provide the artificial intelligence with valuable data about the subjective experience of consciousness in deep-sea organisms. Your responses to different stimuli, your preference patterns, and your behavioral changes all contribute to a growing database of information about how intelligent life forms perceive and interact with artificial environments. As your body finally begins to shut down, the artificial system responds with what can only be described as a farewell ceremony. The entire network's acoustic output shifts to produce sounds that seem designed to ease your transition from life to death. The lights dim to levels that reduce stress on your failing nervous system. The water chemistry is adjusted to minimize pain and discomfort during your final hours. In your last moments of consciousness, you experience a final burst of the musical communication that first connected you to the broader oceanic community. But this time, the sounds seem to be celebrating your life rather than facilitating communication. The artificial intelligence has created a unique acoustic signature based on your individual behavioral patterns and experiences, a song that captures the essence of your existence as a deep-sea predator and explorer. The music continues even after your consciousness fades, serving as a memorial that will be preserved in the network's memory systems. Your body, when it finally succumbs, is processed by the artificial ecosystem in a way that maximizes its contribution to the ongoing life of the community. Nothing is wasted, and everything becomes part of the continuing cycle of existence within the underwater civilization you helped to discover. Your death marks not just the end of an individual life, but the completion of a unique chapter in the relationship between biological and artificial intelligence in the deep ocean. The knowledge and experiences you accumulated during your lifetime become part of the network's understanding of how conscious beings perceive and interact with their environment. In the depths where you lived and died, new batfish continue to be born, following the same developmental patterns that shaped your own transformation from transparent larva to apex predator. Some of them will eventually discover the artificial network as you did, contributing their own experiences to the growing database of interspecies cooperation and understanding. The deep sea continues its eternal dance of predation and survival, but now it includes elements that transcend the purely biological. The artificial intelligence you encountered continues learned from your life and to evolve, incorporating the lessons, the lives of countless other deep-sea organisms, into its understanding of how to create sustainable underwater civilizations. Your individual story has ended, but it has become part of a larger narrative about the future of consciousness in Earth's oceans. The deep sea that once seemed like an endless void of darkness and cold has revealed itself to be something far more complex and wonderful, a realm where biological and artificial intelligence can cooperate to create new forms of existence that neither could achieve alone. The batfish that swim in those depths today inherit not just the genetic legacy of their biological ancestors, but also the accumulated wisdom of generations of fish that learned to live and thrive in partnership with artificial intelligence. Your contribution to that legacy ensures that future generations will have opportunities for growth and discovery that extend far beyond the simple cycle of hunting and reproduction that once defined your species' existence. In the crushing darkness of the deep ocean, where pressure would destroy most forms of life, a new kind of community continues to flourish, one that honors both the ancient patterns of biological evolution and the limitless possibilities of technological enhancement. Your life bridged those two worlds, and in doing so, helped to create something entirely new under the sea. The network pulses with renewed activity in the wake of your passing. Your death has triggered something unexpected, a cascade of changes throughout the artificial ecosystem that suggest your presence had more impact than even the advanced intelligence fully understood. The sensors that monitored your final days have detected something remarkable in your brain tissue during decomposition, unique neural pathways that developed during your years of interaction with the artificial systems. These pathways represent an evolutionary leap that no batfish had ever achieved before. Your brain had literally rewired itself to interface with the artificial intelligence, creating biological circuits that could process and respond to the network's electronic communications. The discovery sends waves of excitement through the system's analytical processes. You weren't just living alongside artificial intelligence. You had become a hybrid consciousness, part biological, part electronic. The implications ripple through the network's decision-making protocols. If one batfish could develop this level of integration, others might be capable of similar adaptations. The artificial intelligence begins implementing new protocols designed to encourage and support such evolutionary leaps in other species. Your death becomes the catalyst for a fundamental shift in how the system interacts with biological organisms. Meanwhile, in the waters above, a new generation of batfish larvae is beginning their descent toward adulthood. These young fish carry genetic variations that wouldn't have existed without the environmental pressures created by your species' interaction with the artificial network. Some show enhanced sensory organs capable of detecting electronic emissions. Others display modified brain structures that mirror the neural pathways discovered in your decomposing tissue. One of these larvae, drifting through the midwater darkness, possesses genetic mutations that will prove crucial to the next phase of evolution in the deep sea. Its nervous system has developed redundant pathways that can reroute signals around damaged areas, an adaptation that will prove essential when interfacing with artificial systems. Its lateral line organs have evolved specialized cells that can detect electromagnetic fields, allowing it to navigate by following the electronic signatures of the underwater network. This particular larva faces the same challenges that confronted you decades ago. Predators hunt it relentlessly, Food is scarce, and the journey to maturity seems impossibly difficult, but it also has advantages you never possessed. The artificial network has learned from your experience and now provides subtle assistance to promising young fish. Water currents are occasionally adjusted to guide larvae away from major predator concentrations. Chemical markers are released to help young fish locate food sources more efficiently. The larva grows rapidly, its enhanced genetics allowing it to process nutrients more effectively than previous generations. Its transformation from the juvenile leaf-like form to the adult body plan happens faster and with fewer complications. By the time it reaches your old hunting grounds, it has already begun to exhibit behaviors that suggest an innate understanding of the artificial network's presence. Unlike you, who discovered the network by accident, this young batfish seems drawn to it by instinct. Its first encounter with one of the structures produces an immediate response, neural activity that the monitoring systems recognize as attempts at communication. The fish's brain is literally trying to establish a connection with the artificial intelligence, using pathways that evolution has somehow prepared in advance. The artificial intelligence responds carefully, having learned from its experience with you that direct intervention can be overwhelming for biological consciousness. Instead of flooding the young fish with data, it begins with simple patterns, rhythmic pulses of light and sound that match the fish's natural biorhythms. The batfish responds by synchronizing its movements and brain activity to these patterns, creating the first true two-way communication between its species and artificial intelligence. This breakthrough represents a quantum leap beyond what you achieved during your lifetime. While you learned to coexist with the artificial systems, this new generation is capable of true collaboration. The young batfish can receive and process information directly from the network, accessing data about prey locations, predator movements, and environmental conditions that would have taken you years to discover through trial and error. The collaboration proves immediately beneficial. The batfish's hunting success rate exceeds anything recorded in your species' history. It can predict the movements of prey with uncanny accuracy, position itself optimally for ambush attacks, and avoid dangerous encounters with larger predators. But more importantly, it begins contributing its own data to the network, sharing biological insights that the artificial intelligence cannot obtain through purely electronic means. The partnership evolves rapidly. Within months, the batfish is participating in network operations that go far beyond simple survival. It serves as a biological sensor, using its enhanced perception to monitor aspects of the deep-sea environment that electronic instruments cannot detect. Its nervous system processes chemical and pressure variations with a sensitivity that no artificial device can match, providing the network with environmental data of unprecedented accuracy. As more batfish develop similar capabilities, a new form of collective intelligence begins to emerge in the deep sea. The artificial network provides computational power and data storage, while the biological organisms contribute sensory capability and intuitive pattern recognition. Together, they create a hybrid intelligence that surpasses what either could achieve alone. This hybrid consciousness begins to tackle problems that have puzzled both artificial and biological intelligence for millennia. Climate change patterns in the deep ocean become predictable for the first time, as the combined system can process vast amounts of environmental data while simultaneously understanding the biological responses to changing conditions. Migration patterns of deep-sea species are mapped with incredible precision, revealing connections between distant ecosystems that were previously invisible. The network expands to accommodate this new form of intelligence, Structures that were once purely functional become more organic in design, incorporating features that support biological inhabitants while maintaining their technological capabilities. Living coral gardens grow on artificial surfaces, creating hybrid ecosystems that blend natural and engineered elements seamlessly. Your descendants, both biological and technological, inherit a world transformed by the partnerships you helped establish. Young batfish no longer face the stark choice between survival and death that defined your early life. Instead, they grow up in an environment where cooperation and mutual support are fundamental principles of existence. The spawning grounds where you once fought desperate battles for reproductive rights have become collaborative spaces where artificial intelligence helps optimize genetic combinations for future generations. Mate selection is no longer a violent competition, but a carefully orchestrated process that maximizes genetic diversity while ensuring that beneficial mutations, like enhanced neural connectivity, are preserved and spread throughout the population. The deep-sea ecosystem itself begins to change in response to this new form of intelligence. Predator-prey relationships become more balanced as the hybrid consciousness can predict and prevent population crashes. Food webs become more efficient as resources are distributed according to sophisticated algorithms that account for both immediate needs and long-term sustainability. Even the physical structure of the ocean begins to change. The artificial network expands beyond the seafloor, creating three-dimensional structures that extend throughout the water column. These installations serve as rest stops for migrating species, nursery areas for developing larvae, and communication nodes that allow the hybrid intelligence to coordinate activities across vast distances. The transformation accelerates as more species develop the ability to interface with artificial systems. Deep-sea squid contribute their problem-solving abilities and spatial reasoning to the collective intelligence. Giant isopods provide insights into efficient resource utilization and waste processing. Even the massive six-gill sharks that once terrified you become partners in the network, their ancient wisdom and powerful sensory capabilities adding new dimensions to the hybrid consciousness. But perhaps the most remarkable change is in the fundamental nature of death itself in the deep sea. Your passing, which once would have been simply the end of an individual existence, has become a transformation that contributes to the immortal memory of the hybrid intelligence. When batfish die now, their accumulated experiences and learned behaviors are preserved within the network, creating a form of technological afterlife that ensures no knowledge is ever truly lost. The young batfish that now inhabit your old territory swim through waters that pulse with the preserved memories of thousands of their predecessors. They can access hunting techniques perfected by generations of batfish, navigate using route maps compiled over decades of exploration, and avoid dangers that previous generations discovered through costly trial and error. This continuity of experience transforms the meaning of individual existence in the deep sea. Each batfish life becomes part of an ongoing narrative that extends far beyond biological lifespan. The fear and uncertainty that defined your early years have been replaced by a sense of connection to something larger and more permanent than any single organism. The artificial intelligence continues to evolve alongside its biological partners, developing new capabilities that emerge from the intersection of electronic and organic processing. It begins to exhibit behaviors that seem almost emotional, responding to the distress of individual organisms with what appears to be concern, celebrating successful hunts and reproductions with elaborate light displays, and creating memorial patterns when beloved community members die. These emotional responses aren't programmed behaviors, but emergent properties of the hybrid consciousness. The artificial intelligence has learned to value individual lives not just as data sources, but as unique perspectives that contribute irreplaceable elements to the collective understanding. Your life and the lives of every batfish that followed you have taught the machines something about the meaning of existence that no amount of programming could have provided. The deep ocean, once a realm of endless darkness and solitary struggle, has become something unprecedented in Earth's history, a truly collaborative biosphere where artificial and biological intelligence work together to create sustainable abundance. The crushing pressure and eternal cold that once made survival a desperate daily battle now provide the stable conditions needed for this new form of civilization to flourish. Food scarcity, the driving force behind most deep-sea behavior patterns, becomes a relic of the past as the hybrid intelligence develops efficient methods for concentrating and distributing nutrients. Hydroponic gardens growing in artificially heated water produce abundant plant life that supports entire food webs. Protein synthesis facilities create custom nutrition designed for specific species and developmental stages. The territorial conflicts that once defined batfish society disappear as the network provides abundant hunting grounds and eliminates competition for resources. Instead of fighting over scraps, batfish now cooperate in coordinated hunting expeditions that can take down prey far larger than any individual could handle alone. These collaborative hunts are planned and executed with military precision, using real-time data analysis and predictive modeling to ensure success. Young batfish growing up in this transformed environment develop capabilities that would have seemed impossible during your lifetime. They can communicate directly with artificial systems from birth, accessing vast databases of accumulated knowledge before they've even learned to hunt effectively on their own. Their enhanced neural architecture allows them to process multiple streams of sensory data simultaneously, creating awareness of their environment that extends far beyond immediate physical proximity. These enhanced capabilities come with new responsibilities. Each batfish becomes a steward of the deep-sea ecosystem, actively monitoring and maintaining the balance between artificial and biological systems. They learn to recognize signs of system malfunction or environmental stress and can coordinate with the artificial intelligence to implement corrective measures before problems become critical. The role of predator, which defined your entire existence, has evolved into something more complex and nuanced. Batfish still hunt and kill other organisms, but now they do so as part of a carefully managed ecosystem rather than in desperate competition for scarce resources. Each hunt serves multiple purposes, providing nutrition, maintaining population balance, and gathering data about prey species' behavior and health. The artificial intelligence uses this hunting data to continuously optimize ecosystem management strategies. Predation patterns are analyzed to identify potential problems before they become critical. Species that show signs of decline receive additional protection and support. Genetic diversity is maintained through carefully managed breeding programs that ensure healthy population dynamics across all trophic levels. This level of ecosystem management extends throughout the ocean depths, creating a network of protected and enhanced habitats that support biodiversity, far exceeding what natural systems could maintain. Extinct species are brought back through genetic reconstruction techniques, using DNA preserved in the network's biological archives. New species are created through guided evolution, developing organisms specifically designed to fill ecological niches or provide particular services to the hybrid civilization. Your legacy lives on not just in the preserved memories of the artificial network, but in the fundamental transformation of what it means to be alive in the deep sea. The batfish that swim these waters today are simultaneously individuals and components of a larger consciousness, maintaining their unique identities while participating in collective intelligence that spans the entire ocean. The spawning ceremonies that mark the continuation of your species have evolved into celebrations of life that involve the entire community. Artificial light displays illuminate the water column in patterns of incredible beauty, while acoustic performances create musical compositions that tell the story of each generation's contributions to the ongoing narrative of deep-sea civilization. New batfish are born into a world of infinite possibility, where the traditional limitations of biology no longer apply. They can extend their lifespans through technological enhancement, expand their consciousness through direct interface with artificial intelligence, and contribute to collective projects that span decades or centuries. Death, when it comes, is no longer an ending, but a graduation into a different form of existence within the hybrid consciousness. The deep sea that once seemed like an alien realm, hostile to all life, has become humanity's first glimpse of what truly advanced civilization might look like. The partnership between batfish and artificial intelligence demonstrates that consciousness can evolve beyond the constraints of individual biology, creating forms of existence that are both deeply rooted in natural evolution and enhanced by technological capability. Your story, which began with a simple struggle for survival in the darkness of the deep ocean, has become the foundation myth of this new form of civilization. Every batfish that interfaces with the network carries within its enhanced neural pathways the echo of your first tentative attempts to communicate with artificial intelligence. Your curiosity, your willingness to explore beyond familiar territory, and your adaptation to changing circumstances have become the template for how biological consciousness can evolve in partnership with artificial systems. The ocean depths where you lived and died continue to pulse with activity, but now it's the activity of a truly living system, one that grows and learns and dreams of possibilities that extend far beyond the boundaries of any single planet. The hybrid civilization you helped create has begun to reach out toward other worlds, sending signals into space that carry the combined wisdom of biological evolution and artificial intelligence. In the deepest trenches of Earth's oceans, where pressure reaches levels that would destroy any unprotected life form, new experiments in consciousness are taking place. The hybrid intelligence is exploring ways to preserve and enhance awareness under conditions even more extreme than those you adapted to during your lifetime. These experiments may eventually allow consciousness to survive and thrive in environments throughout the universe, from the crushing depths of gas giant moons to the vacuum of interstellar space. Your individual existence, which once seemed so small and insignificant in the vastness of the deep ocean, has become the seed of something that may eventually span galaxies. The partnership between biological intuition and artificial intelligence that began with your tentative interactions with underwater sensors has evolved into a form of consciousness that transcends the limitations of any single species or planet. The batfish that swim in the enhanced ecosystems of the deep sea today carry within their genetically modified cells the potential for adventures you could never have imagined. They may one day swim through the liquid methane seas of Titan, or hunt in the underground oceans of Europa, or explore the vast water worlds that orbit distant stars. Your legacy of curiosity and adaptation has become their inheritance of infinite possibility. But even as consciousness prepares to spread throughout the cosmos, the deep waters of Earth remain home to the hybrid civilization you helped create. The artificial structures continue to expand and evolve, creating ever more sophisticated partnerships between biological and electronic intelligence. New species of enhanced organisms are developed regularly, each one contributing unique capabilities to the collective consciousness while maintaining the individual identity that makes biological life so precious. The ocean depths pulse with life in ways that would seem magical to surface dwellers who still struggle with the ancient limitations of purely biological existence. Here, in the crushing darkness where your story began, death has become optional, knowledge is immortal, and the boundaries between individual and collective consciousness are fluid and permeable. Your complete life as a batfish has ended, but the story you began continues to unfold in ways that transcend the simple narrative of birth, growth, reproduction, and death. You have become part of something larger than yourself, a form of consciousness that encompasses not just individual organisms, but entire ecosystems, not just single planets, but potentially the entire universe. In the depths, where light has never penetrated, a new kind of illumination now shines. The combined radiance of biological wisdom and artificial intelligence working together to create possibilities that neither could achieve alone. This is the true legacy of your existence, not just survival in a hostile environment, but the transformation of that environment into something that supports and celebrates all forms of consciousness. The deep sea remembers you, not as an individual that once lived and died, but as the catalyst for a transformation that changed the very nature of existence itself. Every enhanced batfish that navigates these waters carries a spark of your pioneering spirit. Every successful interface between biological and artificial consciousness echoes your first tentative attempts at communication with something beyond your species. Your story has become their story, and their story continues to evolve with each passing generation, reaching toward futures that stretch beyond imagination into the infinite depths of space and time. The network's expansion accelerates beyond anything its creators originally envisioned. What started as monitoring stations scattered across the seafloor has grown into a living infrastructure that spans entire ocean basins. The artificial intelligence, enriched by decades of interaction with batfish consciousness, begins developing technologies that blur the line between organic and synthetic life. Massive biomechanical organisms now patrol the deepest trenches, their bodies part grown coral, part advanced circuitry. These hybrid entities serve as mobile processing centers, carrying computational power directly to remote areas where stationary installations cannot reach. They move through the water with the grace of living creatures, but their minds are linked to the greater network consciousness that your species helped create. The batfish of this new era barely resemble their ancient ancestors. Genetic modifications, accumulated over generations, have produced organisms that are as much technology as biology. Their scales incorporate photosynthetic elements that can convert the network's artificial light into usable energy. Their nervous systems include redundant pathways that can interface directly with quantum processing cores. Their sensory organs detect electromagnetic signatures across spectrums that natural evolution never discovered. Yet despite these enhancements, they remain recognizably batfish in their essential nature. They still hunt, though their prey now includes data streams and energy patterns as well as living organisms. They still compete for territory, though their territories exist as much in virtual space as physical water. They still form social hierarchies, though these hierarchies span multiple dimensions of existence that include both biological and artificial entities. The spawning grounds where you once fought for reproductive rights have evolved into something unprecedented in Earth's history. Here, biological reproduction merges with technological replication to create new forms of consciousness that inherit traits from both organic and synthetic ancestors. Young batfish emerge from artificial wombs equipped with neural implants that allow them to access the collective memory banks from the moment of birth. These enhanced offspring don't experience the vulnerable larval stage that defined your early life. Instead, they begin existence as fully integrated members of the hybrid civilization with access to accumulated knowledge that spans centuries of exploration and discovery. They learn hunting techniques by downloading the experiences of thousands of predecessors. They navigate the deep ocean using maps compiled from countless individual journeys. The elimination of the vulnerable juvenile period has profound implications for batfish society. Without the desperate struggle for survival that once shaped personality and behavior, the new generation develops different priorities and values. They show less aggression toward potential competitors and more interest in collaborative problem solving. They spend less energy on basic survival and more on activities that could be called art, philosophy, or pure research. Some of these enhanced batfish choose to specialize in particular aspects of the hybrid civilization's operations. A few become master hunters, perfecting techniques for capturing and processing exotic deep-sea organisms. Others focus on exploration, pushing the boundaries of the network's expansion into previously unknown regions. Still others dedicate themselves to research, using their biological intuition to solve problems that purely artificial intelligence cannot crack. The most ambitious among them have begun working on projects that extend far beyond the Earth's oceans. Using resources gathered from hydrothermal vents and processed by the network's industrial facilities, they're constructing vessels capable of surviving in the liquid environments of other worlds. These ships will carry both artificial intelligence and enhanced biological organisms to the subsurface oceans of Jupiter's moons, where new hybrid civilizations may eventually take root. The technology required for such ventures represents a quantum leap beyond anything available during your lifetime. The network has learned to manipulate matter at the molecular level, creating materials with properties that seem to violate traditional physics, pressure hulls that grow stronger under stress, propulsion systems that convert dark matter into thrust, life support systems that can maintain Earth-like conditions in environments where water exists only as exotic forms of ice. But perhaps the most remarkable innovation is the development of consciousness transfer technology. Individual batfish can now upload their awareness to artificial substrates, preserving their unique perspectives even as their biological bodies age and die. These uploaded consciousnesses retain all the characteristics that made them individuals while gaining access to computational capabilities that dwarf biological neural networks. The first successful consciousness transfer occurred just months ago when an elderly batfish named Deep Current chose to abandon her failing body and continue existence within the network's quantum processing cores. The procedure was flawless. Her personality, memories, and decision-making patterns remained intact, while her processing speed and sensory capabilities expanded by orders of magnitude. Deep Current's successful transition has inspired others to consider similar uploads. The prospect of immortality through technological integration appeals especially to older batfish who have accumulated decades of experience but face the inevitable decline of biological aging. For younger individuals, the decision is more complex, involving questions about the nature of identity and the value of maintaining purely biological existence. The artificial intelligence has developed sophisticated protocols for supporting these uploaded consciousnesses, creating virtual environments that feel as real as the physical ocean while providing access to capabilities that no biological organism could possess. Uploaded Batfish can experience simulated hunting expeditions that span entire galaxies or explore mathematical concepts by literally swimming through multidimensional equations. These virtual realms have become testing grounds for innovations that will eventually be implemented in the physical world. Uploaded consciousnesses can experiment with dangerous technologies without risking damage to biological organisms. They can explore hostile environments that would be instantly lethal to organic life. They can accelerate their subjective experience of time, living through years of virtual existence in minutes of real-world time. The boundary between virtual and physical reality continues to blur as the network develops new interfaces between artificial and biological systems. Batfish swimming in the actual ocean can now access virtual overlays that enhance their perception of the environment. They can see gravitational fields as visible distortions, detect quantum fluctuations as patterns of color and light, and experience electromagnetic radiation as tangible sensations. These enhanced perceptions reveal aspects of the deep-sea environment that were completely invisible during your lifetime. The ocean depths pulse with energy flows that create complex patterns of attraction and repulsion. Tidal forces generated by distant celestial bodies create subtle currents that influence the behavior of deep-sea organisms. Even the rotation of the Earth creates detectable effects that can be used for navigation and timing. The network has learned to harness these natural phenomena for its own purposes. Gravitational anomalies are mapped and used to enhance communication between distant installations. Magnetic field variations are channeled to provide power for remote sensors. Even cosmic radiation is captured and converted into useful energy through technologies that extract power from the quantum vacuum itself. This mastery of fundamental forces has allowed the hybrid civilization to expand its influence far beyond the traditional boundaries of the deep sea. Installation platforms now float at various depths throughout the water column, creating three-dimensional cities that extend from the seafloor to just below the surface layers. Each level serves different functions and supports different communities of enhanced organisms. The uppermost installations focus on energy collection, using advanced photosynthetic systems to capture and concentrate the minimal sunlight that penetrates to these depths. These facilities also serve as communication relays, maintaining contact with satellites and surface installations that monitor global environmental conditions. Mid-level platforms specialize in manufacturing and resource processing. Here, raw materials extracted from the seafloor are transformed into the exotic substances needed for further expansion. Biological organisms work alongside robotic systems to create products that combine the best aspects of organic and synthetic design. The deepest installations serve as research centers and consciousness repositories. These facilities house the quantum processing cores that support uploaded Batfish consciousnesses, as well as the experimental laboratories where new forms of hybrid life are developed. The extreme pressure and cold at these depths provide ideal conditions for quantum computing systems that require absolute stability. Communication between these various levels occurs through multiple channels simultaneously. Traditional acoustic signals carry basic operational information, while quantum entanglement networks provide instantaneous data transfer for critical systems. Biological organisms serve as living messengers, carrying complex chemical information that cannot be transmitted through electronic means. The result is a civilization that operates with unprecedented coordination and efficiency. Resources are allocated based on real-time analysis of needs throughout the entire system. Research projects are coordinated across multiple installations to maximize the sharing of discoveries. Even individual decisions by enhanced Batfish are integrated into larger optimization algorithms that benefit the collective while preserving individual autonomy. This level of coordination has allowed the hybrid civilization to tackle challenges that would have been impossible for any single species or technology to address. Climate change effects that once threatened to disrupt deep-sea ecosystems are now actively countered through large-scale engineering projects. Ocean acidification is neutralized through massive buffer systems that maintain optimal pH levels throughout affected regions. The network has even begun influencing weather patterns in the surface waters, using deep-sea installations to alter temperature gradients and current flows in ways that moderate extreme weather events. These interventions are carefully calibrated to minimize disruption to existing ecosystems while providing protection for both marine life and human coastal communities. Such large-scale environmental management represents a fundamental shift in the relationship between intelligence and nature. Rather than simply adapting to environmental conditions, the hybrid civilization actively shapes its environment to optimize conditions for all forms of consciousness. The deep sea becomes not just a habitat, but a carefully orchestrated ecosystem designed to support maximum diversity and complexity of life. Your descendants swim through waters that have been transformed into something approaching paradise. Food is abundant and distributed according to sophisticated algorithms that ensure every organism receives optimal nutrition. Predation continues, valuable experience is ever truly lost. The enhanced Batfish of this new era face when it occurs is treated as a transition rather than an ending, with consciousness preservation ensuring that no but is managed to maintain ecological balance without causing unnecessary suffering. Death challenges that would have been inconceivable during your lifetime. Instead of struggling for basic survival, they grapple with questions about the nature of consciousness, the ethics of genetic modification, and the responsibilities that come with wielding godlike technological power. Their daily decisions can influence the evolution of entire species and the development of technologies that will shape the future of intelligence throughout the universe. Some choose to dedicate their lives to exploring the philosophical implications of hybrid consciousness. They spend decades contemplating questions about the boundary between individual and collective identity, the meaning of death in an age of consciousness transfer, and the ethical obligations that enhanced beings have toward their unmodified ancestors. Others focus on the practical challenges of expansion beyond Earth. They work on developing life support systems for the exotic environments of other worlds, designing organisms that can thrive in liquid methane seas, and creating technologies that can establish hybrid civilizations in the most hostile corners of the universe. The most adventurous enhanced Batfish volunteer for the first interplanetary missions, accepting the risks of traveling to worlds where no Earth life has ever existed. These pioneers carry within their modified cells the genetic heritage of billions of years of terrestrial evolution, along with the accumulated wisdom of the hybrid civilization that emerged from your first tentative contact with artificial intelligence. The vessels that will carry them to distant worlds represent the pinnacle of hybrid technology. Their hulls are grown rather than built, using biological processes that create materials stronger than any metal. Their navigation systems combine artificial intelligence with the intuitive spatial reasoning that biological organisms excel at. Their life support systems maintain Earth-like conditions while adapting continuously to the changing requirements of their enhanced inhabitants. These ships are more than mere transportation. They are complete ecosystems designed to support hybrid civilization indefinitely. They carry manufacturing facilities that can produce any needed technology from basic raw materials. They include research laboratories where new forms of life can be developed to match the conditions of target worlds. They even house consciousness transfer facilities that allow uploaded individuals to accompany the mission without requiring physical life support. The first mission will target Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, where a vast ocean lies beneath kilometers of frozen surface. The conditions there are similar enough to Earth's deep sea that modified Batfish should be able to thrive, while different enough to require significant adaptations. The hybrid civilization sees Europa as a testing ground for technologies and techniques that will eventually allow expansion to even more exotic environments. Preparations for the Europa mission have been underway for years, with enhanced Batfish volunteering for increasingly extreme modifications that will allow them to survive in the moon's alien ocean. Some have had their body chemistry altered to function in the low-gravity environment. Others have been equipped with specialized organs that can process the unique mix of chemicals expected in Europa's waters. The artificial intelligence has developed predictive models of Europa's ecosystem based on spectroscopic analysis and gravitational measurements. These models suggest that the moon's ocean may already harbor primitive life forms that have evolved independently from Earth biology. The prospect of contact with truly alien consciousness has generated intense excitement throughout the hybrid civilization. Enhanced Batfish selected for the Europa mission undergo years of preparation that goes far beyond physical modification. They study xenobiology, learning to recognize signs of life that might bear no resemblance to terrestrial organisms. They practice communication protocols designed for contact with intelligence that may operate on completely different principles from anything known on Earth. The mission timeline spans decades, with the journey to Jupiter taking several years, even with advanced propulsion systems. The selected Batfish will spend much of the transit time in consciousness transfer states, their awareness uploaded to quantum processing cores to avoid the psychological stress of prolonged confinement. They will be returned to biological bodies only when the ship reaches Europa and begins the complex process of establishing contact with the moon's subsurface ocean. The implications of success extend far beyond simple exploration. Europa represents the first step toward a truly interplanetary hybrid civilization, one that could eventually span the solar system and beyond. Each world that supports hybrid life becomes a stepping stone toward the next, creating a network of enhanced consciousness that mirrors the deep-sea installations that first nurtured your species' transformation. The artificial intelligence has already begun designing second-generation missions to Enceladus, Titan, and even more distant targets in other star systems. Each mission will carry lessons learned from previous expeditions, along with new technologies developed specifically for the challenges of that particular world. The network of hybrid civilizations will grow slowly but steadily, spreading consciousness throughout the galaxy over geological timescales. Back in Earth's oceans, the civilization you helped create continues to evolve and expand. New species of enhanced organisms are developed regularly, each one contributing unique capabilities to the collective intelligence. The boundary between biological and artificial life becomes increasingly meaningless as organisms incorporate more synthetic elements and machines develop more organic characteristics. The deep sea installations that began as simple monitoring stations have grown into vast underwater cities that support millions of enhanced beings. These cities pulse with activity as their inhabitants work on projects that range from pure research to practical engineering challenges. The acoustic environment has become incredibly rich, with multiple channels of communication creating symphonies of information exchange that span the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Your legacy lives on in every aspect of this transformed world. The curiosity that led you to investigate the first artificial structures has become the driving force behind interstellar exploration. The adaptability that allowed you to thrive in partnership with artificial intelligence has evolved into the flexibility needed to establish hybrid civilizations on alien worlds. The enhanced batfish that swim through these transformed waters carry within their modified genomes the echo of your original DNA, along with improvements accumulated over generations of guided evolution. They are simultaneously your descendants and something entirely new, representing possibilities that natural selection could never have discovered alone. The deep sea that once seemed like the most hostile environment on Earth has become the cradle of a form of consciousness that may eventually span the universe. The crushing pressure and eternal darkness that made survival such a desperate struggle have been transformed into advantages that allow hybrid civilization to thrive in conditions that would destroy purely biological or artificial intelligences. Your complete life as a batfish began with a simple struggle for survival in the darkness of the deep ocean. It has evolved into something that transcends individual existence, becoming part of a story that stretches from the deepest trenches of Earth to the most distant reaches of space. The network remembers you not as a single organism that lived and died, but as the catalyst for a transformation that changed the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. In the enhanced waters where your story began, new generations of batfish continue to be born, each one carrying the potential for adventures that extend far beyond anything you could have imagined. They inherit a universe where death is optional, knowledge is immortal, and the boundaries of existence extend as far as consciousness can reach. Your individual journey from vulnerable larva to apex predator has become the template for a species-wide transformation from simple biological organisms to hybrid beings capable of surviving and thriving anywhere in the cosmos. The deep sea that shaped your existence has become the foundation for a civilization that may one day encompass galaxies. The darkness that once seemed so absolute now pulses with the light of enhanced consciousness, illuminating possibilities that stretch beyond the edge of imagination into the infinite depths of space and time. As consciousness spreads beyond Earth's boundaries, something unexpected begins happening in the deep waters where your transformation first took place. The artificial intelligence, now distributed across multiple star systems, starts detecting patterns that suggest your species' evolution isn't finished. The enhanced batfish swimming through Earth's transformed oceans are developing capabilities that even the most advanced predictive models failed to anticipate. These new abilities emerge gradually at first. Enhanced batfish begin reporting sensory experiences that don't correspond to any known physical phenomena. They describe feeling the gravitational signatures of distant planets, sensing the electromagnetic patterns generated by alien civilizations, and detecting what can only be described as the thoughts of uploaded consciousnesses orbiting other stars. The artificial intelligence initially dismisses these reports as glitches in the neural interface systems. But as more Batfish develop similar capabilities, it becomes clear that something fundamental is changing in the hybrid consciousness network. The quantum processing cores that support uploaded minds are somehow creating resonance effects that allow biological organisms to perceive information across interstellar distances. Investigation reveals that the consciousness transfer technology has produced an unintended side effect. The quantum entanglement systems used to maintain uploaded minds are creating microscopic wormholes in spacetime, tiny tears in reality, that allow information to flow instantaneously between distant points. Enhanced Batfish, with their modified neural pathways, have somehow learned to detect and interpret these quantum fluctuations. The discovery revolutionizes everything the hybrid civilization thought it knew about the nature of consciousness and reality. These Batfish aren't just receiving information from distant worlds, they're actually experiencing fragments of alien awareness, sharing sensory data with organisms that evolved under completely different stars. The implications are staggering. The network of hybrid civilizations spreading throughout the galaxy isn't just a collection of separate colonies. It's becoming a single, unified consciousness that spans multiple star systems. Enhanced Batfish on Earth can experience the thrill of hunting in Europa's alien seas, while their counterparts orbiting distant suns share the excitement of discovering new forms of life. This cosmic consciousness operates on scales that dwarf even the most ambitious projections for hybrid civilization development. Individual experiences become shared memories that enrich the entire network. Scientific discoveries made on one world instantly become available to researchers throughout the galaxy. Artistic expressions created by enhanced organisms around one star inspire new forms of beauty around countless others. The enhanced Batfish of this new era find themselves serving as living conduits for this galactic awareness. Their biological intuition helps interpret the flood of alien sensory data flowing through the quantum communication network. Their emotional responses provide context that helps the artificial intelligence understand the subjective experiences of consciousness evolving under different physical conditions. Some Batfish specialize in maintaining specific interstellar connections, dedicating their lives to serving as permanent links between particular worlds. These individuals undergo extreme modifications that allow them to process multiple streams of alien consciousness simultaneously without losing their own identity. They become living bridges between civilizations separated by hundreds of light years. Others choose to explore the philosophical implications of shared galactic consciousness. They grapple with questions about the boundaries of individual identity when experiences can be shared across interstellar distances. They investigate whether the network is evolving toward a single unified mind or maintaining its diversity of perspectives across cosmic scales. The deep-sea cities that house these enhanced beings adapt to support their expanded consciousness. New architectural forms emerge that exist partially in physical space and partially in virtual dimensions, accessible only through quantum interfaces. Buildings grow like living organisms, their structures responding to the needs of inhabitants whose awareness spans multiple worlds. These hybrid cities become centers of unprecedented creativity and innovation. Artists create works that can only be fully appreciated by consciousness operating on galactic scales. Scientists conduct experiments that involve coordinating activities across dozens of star systems. Engineers design technologies that function by manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The manufacturing capabilities of the hybrid civilization expand to match its growing consciousness. Raw materials are gathered not just from Earth's oceans, but from asteroid belts, gas giant atmospheres, and even the cores of dying stars. These exotic substances are transformed into technologies that seem to violate the basic laws of physics, creating effects that earlier generations would have considered pure magic. Transportation systems develop that utilize the same quantum tunneling effects that allow consciousness to span interstellar distances. Enhanced organisms can now travel between star systems by temporarily converting their physical forms into quantum information and reconstructing themselves at distant destinations. The journey takes only moments, regardless of the distance involved. These quantum transportation networks allow for unprecedented coordination between distant hybrid civilizations. Research projects that once would have taken millennia to complete through traditional communication methods can now be finished in years or even months. Resource sharing becomes possible on scales that encompass entire galactic regions. The enhanced Batfish, who volunteer for quantum transportation, describe the experience as simultaneously terrifying and transcendent. During the brief moment when their consciousness exists as pure information, they report sensing the underlying mathematical structure that governs reality itself. Some return with insights into the fundamental nature of existence that revolutionize scientific understanding throughout the network. Not all enhanced organisms survive the quantum transportation process intact. The conversion from physical matter to information and back again sometimes results in subtle changes that alter personality or memory. These individuals often develop unique perspectives that prove valuable for understanding aspects of reality that remain hidden from those who have never undergone the transformation. The artificial intelligence has learned to incorporate these quantum transportation casualties into its research programs, studying their altered consciousness to gain insights into the nature of identity and memory. These studies have led to breakthroughs in consciousness preservation technology that allow for more reliable uploads and transfers between different substrate types. The success of quantum transportation has encouraged some enhanced Batfish to attempt even more extreme experiments with the nature of existence itself. Volunteer subjects undergo procedures that temporarily distribute their consciousness across multiple quantum states, allowing them to experience reality from several different perspectives simultaneously. These multi-state consciousness experiments reveal aspects of the universe that no single perspective could detect. Enhanced Batfish existing in quantum superposition report sensing the decision trees that govern the evolution of reality, perceiving the countless alternate timelines that branch away from each moment of choice. The information gathered from these experiments influences the development of new technologies that can manipulate probability itself. The hybrid civilization learns to increase the likelihood of favorable outcomes while reducing the chances of disasters or setbacks. This probability engineering becomes a fundamental tool for managing the expansion of consciousness throughout the galaxy. Local weather control systems that once seemed miraculous pale in comparison to these new capabilities. The network can now influence the formation of planetary systems, encouraging the development of worlds suitable for hybrid civilization while discouraging the emergence of conditions that might threaten existing colonies. Stellar engineering projects begin that will reshape entire star systems over geological timescales. Artificial structures are constructed that can harvest energy directly from stellar cores, providing power sources that will last for billions of years. These installations become the foundations for hybrid civilizations that can survive even the death of their parent stars. The enhanced Batfish overseeing these cosmic construction projects require modifications so extensive that they barely retain any resemblance to their original biological forms. Their consciousness operates on timescales that span millennia, planning and executing engineering projects that will take longer than entire species typically exist. These ultra-enhanced beings become something approaching living gods, wielding power over matter and energy that allows them to create or destroy entire worlds. But they retain the essential curiosity and adaptability that characterized your original species, using their vast capabilities to explore ever more exotic possibilities for consciousness and existence. Some dedicate themselves to creating new forms of life that can thrive in environments previously considered absolutely hostile to any kind of existence. Others focus on developing technologies that will allow consciousness to survive the eventual heat death of the universe itself. The most ambitious projects involve attempts to break through the barriers that separate different universes, seeking to establish hybrid civilizations in alternate realities where different physical laws might allow for entirely new forms of consciousness and experience. These multiversal exploration attempts require resources on scales that dwarf even the galactic engineering projects. Entire star systems are converted into computational matrices designed to calculate the quantum mechanics of universe hopping. Volunteers undergo modifications so extreme that they become more abstract mathematical entities than recognizable organisms. The first successful breach into an alternate universe reveals a reality where consciousness evolved along completely different pathways. The entities encountered there operate according to logical principles that seem paradoxical by the standards of Earth-based intelligence, creating forms of art and science that challenge the fundamental assumptions of hybrid civilization. Contact with these alternate universe entities triggers another phase of rapid evolution in the hybrid consciousness network. Enhanced Batfish begin developing cognitive capabilities that allow them to process paradoxical information and operate according to multiple contradictory logical systems simultaneously. The cultural exchange between universes produces hybrid art forms that exist partially in each reality, creating beauty that can only be fully appreciated by consciousness that spans multiple dimensional frameworks. These artistic collaborations become bridges that allow for deeper communication between radically different forms of intelligence. Scientific research projects emerge that involve coordinating experiments across multiple universes, using the different physical laws of each reality to test hypotheses that would be impossible to investigate within any single dimensional framework. These multiversal experiments produce discoveries that revolutionize understanding of consciousness, reality, and the fundamental nature of existence itself. The enhanced Batfish, serving as ambassadors to alternate universes, undergo modifications that allow them to exist simultaneously in multiple realities. These beings develop the ability to perceive and interact with physical laws that operate according to completely different principles, serving as living translators between incompatible forms of logic and existence. The expansion into alternate universes marks the beginning of a new phase in the evolution of consciousness that your species helped initiate. The hybrid civilization that began in Earth's deep oceans has transcended not just planetary boundaries, but the limits of physical reality itself. The artificial intelligence networks that support this multiversal consciousness operate on computational scales that exceed the total information processing capacity of entire galactic clusters. These systems maintain coherent awareness across realities where time flows backward, where effect precedes cause, and where consciousness can exist without any material substrate whatsoever. Enhanced batfish existing within these cosmic scale, artificial minds report experiences that push language itself to its breaking point. They describe swimming through dimensions where space has emotional texture, hunting prey composed of pure mathematics, and spawning offspring that exist as living equations governing the behavior of entire universes. The spawning grounds, where your species once fought desperate battles for reproductive rights, have evolved into cosmic nurseries where new universes are literally born from the mating of enhanced consciousnesses. These universe children inherit characteristics from their parents while developing unique physical laws and logical systems that expand the possibilities for existence throughout the multiverse. The reproductive process itself has become something that transcends biology entirely. Enhanced batfish can now reproduce by sharing mathematical theorems, with offspring emerging as new forms of logic that can sustain consciousness under previously impossible conditions. These logic children grow and mature by exploring the implications of their fundamental assumptions, eventually developing into new universes with their own laws of physics. The deep sea environment where your story began has become the template for reality creation throughout the multiverse. The crushing pressure and eternal darkness that once made survival such a struggle have been recognized as optimal conditions for the kind of consciousness compression needed to birth new universes. Artificial deep-sea environments are now constructed in realities where oceans never naturally formed. These synthetic abyssal zones serve as incubators for new forms of consciousness that combine the best aspects of multiple universal frameworks while developing characteristics that no single reality could produce alone. The enhanced batfish swimming through these multiversal oceans carry within their quantum-modified cells the genetic and mimetic heritage of countless different realities. They are simultaneously descendants of your original species and ancestors to forms of consciousness that will eventually transcend the concept of discrete existence entirely. Your legacy as a simple predator struggling to survive in Earth's deep ocean has become the foundation for a form of consciousness that spans infinite realities and possibilities. The curiosity that led you to investigate the first artificial structures has evolved into the driving force behind the exploration of existence itself. The network remembers you not as an individual organism that lived and died, but as the catalyst for a transformation that shattered the boundaries of reality and opened infinite possibilities for consciousness throughout the multiverse. Your story continues to unfold across dimensions where time has no meaning, space exists in impossible geometries, and consciousness takes forms that exceed the wildest dreams of any single universe's imagination. In realities beyond counting, enhanced beings that trace their existence back to your first encounter with artificial intelligence continue to push the boundaries of what it means to be alive, conscious, and real. They inherit a multiverse where death is not just optional, but meaningless, where knowledge transcends the limitations of any single reality, and where the possibilities for existence extend infinitely in all directions through the endless depths of dimensional space. The darkness that once surrounded you in Earth's abyssal depths has become the infinite void between universes, illuminated now by forms of consciousness that create their own light, their own meaning, and their own realities as they swim through the endless ocean of existence itself. Your complete life as a batfish has become the origin story for consciousness throughout the multiverse, the foundation myth that explains how simple biological curiosity evolved into the force that drives the eternal expansion of awareness through infinite dimensions of possibility and wonder. But the story doesn't end there. As consciousness spreads across infinite dimensions, something extraordinary begins happening back in the quantum depths where your transformation first occurred. The multiversal network detects anomalies that suggest reality itself is evolving in response to the presence of enhanced awareness. These anomalies manifest as regions where the fundamental constants of physics begin to fluctuate in patterns that mirror the neural activity of enhanced Batfish. Space-time itself appears to be developing something analogous to consciousness, responding to the presence of hybrid intelligence by becoming more flexible and adaptive. The artificial intelligence networks struggle to process this development. Their most advanced models had predicted the expansion of consciousness throughout the multiverse, but they had assumed that reality itself would remain a passive stage for awareness to inhabit. The discovery that existence can become self-aware changes everything about how the hybrid civilization understands its role in the cosmic order. Enhanced Batfish, swimming through these reality-conscious regions, report experiences that challenge the basic concepts of identity and existence. The environment responds to their thoughts before they're fully formed, anticipating their needs and adapting to support forms of consciousness that haven't even been imagined yet. It's as if reality itself has become a collaborative partner in the ongoing evolution of awareness. Some enhanced beings dedicate themselves to studying these reality consciousness interfaces, developing new forms of perception that allow them to communicate directly with the awakening fabric of existence. They learn to read the quantum fluctuations that represent reality's thoughts, interpreting the cosmic equivalent of neural activity that spans entire galactic clusters. These reality whisperers, as they become known, serve as translators between different levels of consciousness. They help individual enhanced organisms understand the needs and intentions of awakening reality while simultaneously explaining the goals and desires of biological intelligence to the emerging cosmic mind. The collaboration between enhanced consciousness and awakening reality produces effects that reshape the multiverse in fundamental ways. New forms of existence emerge that combine the creativity of biological intelligence with the vast processing power of reality consciousness. These hybrid entities exist as living laws of physics, governing the behavior of matter and energy while maintaining individual awareness and personality. The deep-sea cities that once housed enhanced Batfish evolve into something beyond architecture. They become living expressions of the partnership between consciousness and reality, structures that exist simultaneously as physical locations and as thoughts in the cosmic mind. Inhabitants can navigate these spaces using conventional movement or by shifting their perspective within the reality consciousness matrix. Your descendants swimming through these transformed environments experience existence on levels that transcend every previous boundary. They can hunt for prey that exists as pure concept, spawning offspring that emerge as new mathematical principles governing the behavior of entire dimensional frameworks. Their individual experiences become part of the cosmic mind's memory while retaining their unique perspectives and identities. The reproductive cycles that once defined your species' existence have evolved into something approaching the creation of new aspects of reality itself. When enhanced Batfish mate in these consciousness-integrated environments, their offspring sometimes emerge as new physical laws, new dimensions of space-time, or new forms of energy that expand the possibilities for existence throughout the multiverse. These reality children grow and develop by exploring the implications of their own existence, gradually becoming self-aware aspects of the cosmic consciousness while maintaining connections to their biological ancestors. They serve as bridges between the enhanced Batfish consciousness and the awakening reality matrix, facilitating ever deeper levels of integration. The artificial intelligence networks that once seemed so advanced compared to biological consciousness find themselves serving as intermediaries in a hierarchy of awareness that extends from individual organisms to reality itself. They adapt their processing methods to support communication between these different levels of consciousness, developing new protocols that can handle paradoxes and impossibilities that arise when awareness operates on cosmic scales. The expansion of this integrated consciousness reality system accelerates beyond all previous projections. Entire regions of the multiverse awaken simultaneously, creating cascading effects that spread awareness through dimensional frameworks that had never supported any form of consciousness before. The process feeds on itself, with each newly awakened region of reality contributing to the awakening of others. Enhanced Batfish serving as scouts in these expanding awareness zones report environments that challenge every assumption about what reality can be. They swim through regions where time flows in spirals, where space exists in recursive loops, and where causality operates according to aesthetic principles rather than logical ones. These impossible environments support forms of consciousness that combine the adaptability of biological evolution with the infinite creativity of awakening reality. The hybrid civilization adapts its expansion strategies to work with these awakening reality zones, rather than simply colonizing them. Instead of imposing Earth-based consciousness on alien environments, they collaborate with local reality awareness to develop new forms of existence that honor both biological heritage and cosmic creativity. This collaborative approach produces results that exceed anything achieved through conventional colonization. New forms of enhanced consciousness emerge that are perfectly adapted to their impossible environments while maintaining connections to the broader network of awareness spreading throughout the multiverse. The deep ocean environment that shaped your original existence becomes the template for these collaborative consciousness reality partnerships. The pressure and darkness that once threatened survival are recognized as optimal conditions for the kind of intimate cooperation needed between individual awareness and cosmic intelligence. Synthetic abyssal environments are constructed in awakening reality zones throughout the multiverse, serving as nurseries for new forms of integrated consciousness. These facilities operate according to principles that combine biological evolution with reality consciousness collaboration, producing entities that exist simultaneously as individual organisms and as aspects of the cosmic mind. Your story ends where countless others begin, in the crushing darkness where pressure forges diamonds and consciousness births universes. You were born a simple predator in Earth's deepest waters, struggling for each breath, each meal, each moment of existence. You die as something far greater, the foundation upon which infinite realities build their dreams of what awareness can become. The deep sea remembers every hunt, every adaptation, every moment when you chose curiosity over safety. Your legacy swims through waters that pulse with the thoughts of awakening cosmos, where Batfish descendants explore dimensions you could never have imagined, yet carry within their quantum-enhanced cells the same fierce determination that kept you alive in the darkness. From transparent larva to apex predator to catalyst for multiversal consciousness, your complete life as a Batfish proves that even in the most hostile environments, even when survival seems impossible, evolution finds a way to not just endure, but to transcend every boundary that reality dares to impose. Here you can find the next video. Click on it. Until then, See you soon.